Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Glikman Show. And today we have a very special guest, Dr. Stephen Matlis from the Matlis Medical Clinic. Doctor, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be here as always. It's nice to see you. It's a lovely day today.
Same as well. Listen, I want to know. We all want to know, when is this going to end? When are we going to have a normal life? Roman Barber promised me a Raptors tickets when this whole thing is done. When is that going to happen?
You know, it's a very good question. It's $1 million question. Unfortunately, nobody has the answer. I, as a physician, don't have a crystal ball, as most physicians don't. We're all hoping that it's going to come to end pretty soon, but it all depends on the participation of all the people in Ontario and essentially in the world for this. So I'm really hopeful it's going to end like relatively soon.
Listen, we're 1 year into the pandemic. 1 year. What changed from the beginning till now, based on your knowledge?
So a lot has changed. First and foremost, what changes is the basic understanding of this disease, of the COVID-19. We have discovered its DNA code, its RNA code. We can figure out exactly how it infects people and what they call pathophysiology. But more importantly, we developed the vaccine. We developed vaccine in record time. And I think that speaks volumes about, the perseverance and the knowledge of the scientists and also the people that supported them. So I think it's a huge milestone. Never in history has this ever happened before, where a vaccine was developed in such a short period of time, and more so, it actually became quite effective for the actual prevention of this condition. So that has changed, but also I think more importantly, we as humans learned a little bit about ourselves. How we function under pressure, how we deal with stress, under these kind of very difficult situations. And I think learning about yourself in these kind of difficult times worth more to some people than actually finding the cure for this, because it's a strive for the best, and it's in my opinion, it's a very important lesson that we have learned.
But don't you think it's a problem because the vaccine was developed so fast? We don't know what's going to be the outcome. We don't know the exact side effects, what's going to happen. I mean, people are scared. I'm scared. I don't want to take it. I know some people want to take it because they want to just start go back to the normal life. They're just doing it because they want to come back to normal life. But I don't want to take it. I'm scared. I'm going to wait till everybody's doing it, and then maybe I'll do it too. We don't know what's going to happen 2 or 3 years from now.
It's a great question. And you know what? You're not the only one. We call it vaccine hesitancy. A lot of people are just unsure about the science behind these vaccines simply because it was developed in such a record time. And it's and I'd like to side with people for a moment and say, I totally understand this. Never have we developed a vaccine in 1 year. More or less, it became sort of effective. Just to give you a little bit of background information, the flu vaccine, the annual flu shot, the vaccine that we get every single year, was first developed in the 1930s and 1940s. So we had 67 years of research, development, perfecting that essentially vaccine. And even now, it doesn't always work. From year to year, it doesn't have the best efficacy. There are years where it's only 20, 30% effective. There are years where it's 60, 70% effective. So to have a vaccine such as Pfizer, Moderna, that's developed in record time to be effective over 90%, it's a scientific breakthrough. And I think we all have to embrace that in one way or the other. For me as a physician, I always practice what I preach. I got my vaccine yesterday on my left shoulder, and I was very proud of doing that because I think it's on my behalf a first step of coming back to normal. It's a first step that I took from my family. It's a first sort of step I took from my patients, and I think everybody needs to sort of wake up, read a little bit about it, speak to their physician, and hopefully they can answer most of their questions about it. But in a few years, this will become the norm because, COVID-19 is not going anywhere. It's going to stay with us for a number of years. It's going to mutate. It's going to change very much like the flu is doing right now. And getting these COVID vaccines will be the norm.
But all over the news, they see that 80% of doctors, nurses, medical practitioners refuse to take these shots. They don't want to do it.
Yes, I did see it happen. I did read the news. It's very discouraging. And vaccination is a personal choice, very much like everything else we offer and do in medicine. When you go see a doctor with a concern, if you have a sore throat, part of the examination is going to ask for a detailed history. It's going to do a physical exam, and it's going to give you their opinion about why you have a sore throat. Is it because of viral infection, bacterial infection, strep throat, irritation, right? And it is up to you as a patient to listen to this advice and to take that advice, to ignore this advice, or to seek a second opinion, right? This is the norm in medicine. So physicians, in a way, are almost like an advisor, right? They're consultant, they're medical consultant, and they're using their years of knowledge and experience to that. So very much with flu vaccine, it's not for everybody. There's a lot of people who will not benefit from the vaccine. If you have allergies to certain components, you shouldn't be taking it. If you have certain like autoimmune conditions, you may not have developed such a good immune system, and you're not going to mount a really good immune response to it. This vaccine may not be the right choice for you. But for most people, I think it's the right step. And I understand that, we are in all this sort of together. In order for us to move beyond this sort of pandemic, we have to achieve what they call a herd immunity. It's basically when 60-70% of population have the antibodies, are immune to this condition, then it provides us almost like a safety net for the remainder of the population. So I think, especially for the medical professionals, I think it's very important to go ahead and get the vaccine. It is very safe, up to date. And I just read the statistics recently. There's been over 200 million doses of the vaccine administered. 200 million doses. So over 100 countries in the world received this kind of vaccine. So it's not like we're the first and only country in the world that doing it. It's a very safe vaccine. There's no major side effects. I do want to tell you that, the side effects are more so than a typical flu vaccine. But that's because the product is new. But it's very, very safe, and I got it yesterday, and I feel good about it, and I'm looking forward to my second dose.
I heard the second dose is the one that's giving you the problems. Second dose, the one that give you high fever.
Yeah, it can. Yeah, so it's every vaccination is individualized, so every person is different. So in some people, the symptoms could be relatively mild, a little bit of body aches, a little bit of sort of fatigue, headache. Some people may develop a low-grade fever. It's very different, but it is known to fact that the second dose gives you slightly higher symptoms or side effects than the first dose. So you're right.
What is it? What's inside this vaccine? Is it actual small version of coronavirus?
So great question. There's a number of different vaccines. Many different countries are developing these kind of vaccines. To this date, there's about over 60 different vaccines in the works, because you have to understand that this is a pandemic unlike the world has ever seen. This is a global catastrophe, right? It paralyzed their economy. It prevented kids from going to school. It closed a lot of businesses. It caused a lot of death. So this kind of pandemic is probably the first time, or certainly in my generation, in your generation, that we actually see this kind of stall to the economy, to the health, and everything else. So as you can imagine, from the get-go, there was a huge rush of people and companies and money and investments in countries are going to the market and saying, okay, we want to be the first one to produce this vaccine. So until this day, there's about 60 of them. Now, they're not all licensed in Canada. In Canada, right now, we have, as of this morning, actually 4 different vaccines. There's a Pfizer-BioNTech, which is the German and American company. And there's a Moderna company. The Moderna company, I'm just referring to my notes here, are actually it's American company. There's AstraZeneca, which is the UK and Swedish company, and this morning a brand new game player is the Johnson & Johnson, the American one. So the Pfizer and the Moderna, the 2 most common ones, are actually encapsulated mRNA particles. So what they're doing is it's a very smart technology, and the technology has been there for well over 10 years, and we use it to treat various cancers. But implementation in terms of the use inside the vaccines is relatively new. And I think that's where the hesitation comes in, is because it's never been used in the vaccine form. But in reality, what it is it's trying to mimic or fool your immune system into knowing that you are almost got infected. So, and by the way it's doing it is that it's packaging this mRNA, which is basically the code for the virus, into this envelope, and this envelope is being introduced inside the cell, and the cell is using this knowledge to manufacture a specific coating or protein, we call them spike protein, on the top of the cell, so that your own immune cells learn about it, recognize it, and in the future, if you ever get COVID or get infected with COVID, it's going to destroy the actual virus. So the Pfizer and Moderna work very similar. The AstraZeneca and the new player in the game, the Johnson & Johnson, are what they call viral vectors. It's basically, it resembles more or less the traditional vaccines. What they do is they take a virus, sometimes it's a monkey virus, and they package the inside the genetic code and allow the virus to bring the genetic code inside the cell. And then the process becomes very similar. Now, you might want to ask me why the monkey virus? Why not just take any other virus? Is because the chances of you coming in contact with a monkey virus is very low unless you work in a zoo, right? So that if they were to take a regular virus, your body is more likely to recognize it and to sort of disregard it. So that would essentially go against the actual vaccine efficacy. But what's really cool about the new vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson, is only one dose. And that's a game changer, because not only do the previous vaccines require very, very low temperatures to be stored, sometimes minus 70 degrees, this new vaccine can be stored at relatively normal sort of freezers and fridges, which is available in every doctor's and pharmacy office, but it's only one shot. And it works pretty well. It has a good efficacy.
Let me ask you a question. Why should we trust these companies? They have bad tracks. Some of these companies, if you go online and read what they did in the past and the lawsuits against them, why should we, as people, trust these companies? I mean, you're basically giving your life away to a company that's worth trillions and is there to make money. That's all they're there for.
Yes, like you're right. This world is all about money, right? Everything revolves on money, the contracts and everything else. But the company that make these vaccines are very much the same companies that make your cholesterol medications, your antidepressants, your blood pressure pills. These are the same companies. So these are the same companies that have been with us for decades and decades. They have instilled a lot of trust in the public. Millions of people take medications every single day, and they're considered safe. These are the same companies, the same players in the game. Just the product is different, and
less time for to figure out the side effects.
It's less time to figure out. I mean, the technology has been there for many number of years. I mean, the more traditional vaccines, like the ones that the Chinese are making, the Sinopharm, and the ones that the Russians are making, the Sputnik vaccine from the Gamaleya Institute, these are more traditional vaccines, right? The ones that the Pfizer and BioNTech came up with, it's a really new and unique technology. And as the years goes by, you will see them again over and over again. I'm sure COVID is not the last sort of disease and flu that we actually experience. There'll be a similar one in the future, and you will see the same companies making the same vaccine. So you ask me, is there money involved? There's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of contracts involved, but it's done for the benefit of the people. There's a lot of people dying.
And the companies.
And the companies.
And the shareholders.
And the shareholders. It's a business, right? Whether you're a company that's manufacturing masks to supply the hospitals and clinics, whether you're a company that manufactures syringes to administer these vaccines, you're going to profit from it, right? And you're going to profit from it. But what's the positive results? The positive results that we as a society are moving forward in terms of science and innovation, number one. And number two, we're going to be leaving this pandemic behind us and returning to normal lives, which I think is a huge, huge advantage.
Well, let me ask you a question. You don't think that this whole thing is overblown? I mean, okay, fine. We know that there is a virus, COVID, okay. Somebody can believe it. Somebody don't have to believe it. But we know something exists.
Yes.
Do you think it was overblown by the media? I mean, if you take a look at the rates of deaths and survival, I mean, why is this whole panic? Why are we even calling it pandemic when you have such a small chance of dying?
Yes, I understand where the question comes from. Let's take it a step back. Let's look at 1918, the Spanish flu, right? Killed upwards of 40 million people, right? A lot more than this current pandemic have killed. Back in 1918, we had no similar technology. We had very little knowledge about sort of disease prevention. We had very little knowledge about antibiotics. We had very little knowledge about, mechanical ventilation and so forth. So the game is very different right now. you're right. The COVID doesn't kill a lot of people, right? The relative mortality rate is relatively low. The numbers we have today are as follows, and I'm just going to quote the latest one. So in Ontario, there's just over 300,000 COVID cases, and in Ontario, there's just over 7,000 people that died. So brings the mortality rate to 0.02%, less than 1%. It's relatively low. But let's look at the other side. So let's not look at just one parameter, because death is a very gruesome, and it's the end result of a lot of things. But a lot of people are suffering without dying. A lot of people are suffering on many different levels, such as they're developing really bad respiratory conditions. They're developing severe asthma or asthma-like syndromes after they finish with COVID. They developed a lot of fatigue, which affects their lifestyle afterwards. And more or less, we don't know what the side effect is going to be in 4, 5, 10 years from now. So these numbers could very well quadruple in terms of the morbidity that we experience. It's a very serious disease, and the world is right to react this way. Unfortunately, there is no playbook. Right? This has never happened to us before. In our generation, there was never a pandemic of this magnitude. You cannot compare it to the SARS epidemic in 2000, right? It's the same players, right? It's very similar. This SARS, the pandemic, the flu H1N1, they're very similar players that we have in COVID, right? Why is it more concerning now? It's more concerning because it spread like wildfire all over the world, right? People were traveling, and it affected a lot of people. Why is it so dangerous? It's dangerous because what is your last measure of safety, your last safety measure if you're in the hospital? 3 letters, ICU, right? ICU is the last safety resort you have in any hospital, right? When you walk in the hospital, you're going to go to the emergency room first. And if you're okay, you're going to send home. If you're not, you're going to get admitted to the hospital. If you don't do well in the hospital and the regular bed, they'll probably upgrade your condition to telemetry, which is where they can actually monitor you a little bit better. But beyond that, if you can't breathe on your own, if you can't function on your own, they will place you in ICU. And ICU, that's where the machine takes over your breathing, right? How many ICU beds we have in Ontario?
1,700.
Under 2,000.
Right.
You probably have more Facebook friends than we have ICU beds.
Right.
Right.
Why?
Right. Well, first of all, it takes a lot of knowledge, expertise to run and function inside the ICU. The nursing staff is really different because in a regular hospital, you can have one nurse for 10 patients, 8 to 10 patients. In ICU, because of demands, you have to be there 1 to 2 people, 1 to 1 people. So it takes a lot of resource, a lot more money. And the ICU nurses and doctors have a special training in how to manage this. It also requires respiratory technicians, anesthesiologists for the intubations and management of your stuff. If you're in ICU, chances are you have other conditions going on. Your kidneys may not be working well. Your heart may be weak. But the bottom line is in Ontario, we have millions of people in Ontario. We have only 2,000 or less ICU beds, approximately. Okay. So if you were to get sick and if you can't breathe on your own, right, you need an ICU bed. And if all ICU beds are taken, what are you going to do as a patient? The answer is not much, right? And that's where the danger comes in. That's where the term flatten the curve came in, is because we have hundreds of people. There are no symptoms or very mild symptoms. And then above them is mild to moderate symptoms. And then above them, moderate to severe symptoms that were people that require intubation. We simply didn't have enough resources to deal with a huge influx of people requiring ICU care.
Let me ask you a question. Okay, so they're concentrating so much on the vaccine. Why not concentrate on treatment? Listen, we're a beautiful country, and pretty wealthy too country.
Yes.
They have enough resources to do whatever the hell they want to. We showed it. I mean, they paid everybody so much benefits throughout this time. Why not concentrate at the same time while they're working on a vaccine or building more ICUs, get more staff, make more room? Why not work on the treatment? Why just concentrate on the vaccine?
Yeah, so great question again. So the treatment, everybody's working on the treatment. There's a lot of sort of stories about people using, the malaria drug, hydroxychloroquine. It's been widely sort of described in the media. Donald Trump was advocating for it. A lot of American doctors and even my colleagues were advocating for it. and end up being completely false. It's not working. It gives you side effects, but it doesn't fix anything, right? There's a lot of emphasis in the US on this antiviral drug called remdesivir, right? Which is, you can get it in Canada. Does it work very well? Not very much so, right? There's a lot of monoclonal antibody treatments in the US. When Donald Trump was sick, he got this super duper drug cocktail, which was, developed in US. Does it work very well? Well, it prevents the disease from going 0 to 60 in a few seconds, but it doesn't actually fix the entire problem. But in reality, it's very expensive, and it's not applicable to average hospitals because the dose is really expensive. It would be the same thing as putting everybody on chemotherapy all of a sudden, right? It becomes really expensive, and who's going to pay for all this? We have limited resources. We have socialized healthcare. So we do have certain medications that are in development in terms of, fixing the problem, but the emphasis has been more so on the prevention of the disease because, like I mentioned before, is that, vast majority of people are going to be okay, even less will be in bad shape, and very few will require, ICU support. So if we can prevent this sort of pathway, we've done a great job. Vaccines, if you get a vaccine, the few questions you want to ask yourself is, does it stop the spread of the virus? Does it lessen the symptoms if you have it? And if you do have it and you get the vaccine, does it lessen the burden, right? So, and that's something we're going to figure out pretty soon. Probably next year we're going to have a really good data about it. So far, the results are excellent. The Pfizer BioNTech vaccine is over 90% effective at preventing hospitalization. And what's more important, that not a single person that received the COVID vaccine died. That's a really important measure.
Do you think the steps that the Canadian Ontario healthcare system and the medical staff initially from the get-go, do you think they did everything right? To me, it looks like they failed at every single aspect. Because I'll explain to you why. I look at other countries. Texas is already removing masks. Europe is, half of it, let's say Russia. Free for all. Slowly, everything eases off. We're still in a lockdown. It looks to me like the system failed.
It's failure is a really, really big word, and there's a number of different pathways that we can go this by. So let's talk about this, for example. As a country in Canada, we have a huge country, under 40 million people. Question is, why didn't we lock down sooner? Why didn't we order enough vaccines? Why are we administering enough vaccines? Why are the countries ahead of us, right? Israel, for example, the world leader, the latest number is as follows, and this is just from, just recently. You had over 50% of population in Israel received both doses of vaccine. That's huge, right? Smaller country, small number of people, centralized healthcare system. Everything is on computer. If you receive a dose in one city, everybody knows that. The problem we have in Canada is that we don't have a centralized medical system, right? The systems are managed by the provinces and territories. The vaccine procurement is a federal issue, so the Trudeau's government ordering the vaccines. It's their charge. Their job is to secure enough doses. It's Health Canada's job to make sure that what we're ordering is safe and appropriate for the current condition and safe to administer to the public and do the necessary follow-up and everything else. But it's up to the local healthcare units to sort of distribute these vaccines. There is no playbook for this. We never faced such a big challenge before. Could we have locked down the borders quicker and sooner? Possibly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, hindsight is 2020. Right? That's what they say that. So a year from now, we'll say, are these lockdowns working? Could closing the borders sooner would have been more beneficial? We don't have these answers yet.
What do you think? Do you think the lockdown worked?
So it worked down to a certain degree. With every action you take, there's always a reaction. So is it designed to fix everything? Absolutely not. Is it a universal measure to stop the spread? Yes, most countries that had COVID vaccines implemented some form of lockdown, everywhere from implementing very strong martial law type of curfews to very mild ones to just say, okay, certain stores are closed, certain stores are open, very much in line to what we're doing here. But universally, in all the countries, at some point there's been at least some kind of lockdown. Why? Because it prevents the spread, and that's a very important measure. When we talk about the viral spread, we talked about a few different things. First of all, it's spread by airborne droplets, right? So if you limit the distance in congregation of people, you automatically prevent the disease spread. Very important, right? The time you spend with another person, right? If one has COVID, one doesn't. If you spend more than 10, 15 minutes, your risk going up. If it's just a hi, bye, fine. If you are doing a lot of speaking and talking and singing, that spreads the air droplets, you're more likely to get this kind of condition. So spreading people apart and locking them works. But the question is at what cost, right? We had a lot of businesses going down under. We had a lot of economy, right, is going down. There's a huge unemployment. A lot of moms and pop shops may not reopen again. Huge toll on psychology of kids. They're being out of school. We're taking away from their precious, school years where they socialize, build friendships. Everything is being affected, and everything has been affected at a level not seen before. Again, there's no playbook for this, right? We're doing it step by step. Are we doing the right thing? Well, the first few lockdowns worked. Probably if they'd been a little bit more on top of things in the beginning, they would have probably locked down much quicker and much more profound.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would probably, looking back, and I'm not trying to be a smartass in the room, but the moment that the World Health Organization said, "Listen, there's a problem on the horizon, we probably need to do lockdown," I would lock down all the borders. Okay, border with the U.S., international border, close the airports, close the Mexico border, right? Essential goods and services can stay open. Everything else closes. Okay, essential, keep the pharmacy open, keep, grocery stores open, the gas stations, keep the doctor's office, open, if need be. Okay, everything else closed. The problem with that solution is that if you tell people that in 2 weeks we're going to close everything, it creates huge panic. Right? And it did. I don't know if you remember the toilet paper.
Toilet paper.
Yeah, there was a point in time where, you couldn't buy any toilet paper in Costco. You couldn't buy anything, like flour-based, because people were not relying on delivery of bread or purchasing bread. They were baking all the goods themselves. All the kids were home. You had to keep them busy. You had to do all the baking activities with them, baking muffins. You can't find flour, yeast, baking soda. It was all sold out. There's no toilet paper. Okay, even though we had a good supply, people were just hoarding stuff. That's what happens when people panic. So you can imagine if we close borders on a higher pretense and a higher idea, listen, everything is locked down for a month, there will be huge lineups, and probably people that are not able to buy enough groceries for a month, who live paycheck to paycheck, will be at a huge sort of disadvantage. All the senior citizens who don't have enough funds, who live on Social Security and every single month, didn't have enough money to purchase all these products for a month, right? That was a problem, right? So we had to lock down, but it had to be done very intelligently. And what's done right, let the history be the judge. Maybe in a year we'll know that. But it's because there's no playbook, it's very difficult to manage it from day to day. Now it's a little bit different because now people are, having these different lockdown zones, and honestly, as a physician, I'm confused myself. All these sort of rainbow system, the green, the gray, the red, and everything else.
I'm still lost.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm wearing a mask and washing my hands, 1,000 times a day. Got my vaccines. I'm not seeing my friends. I'm not seeing my, my extended family. I'm trying to be as careful as I can. However, these lockdowns are still in place, and is it nice? It's not nice. I don't think it's good for the kids. I think, I have a child, he's not seeing his colleagues, he's not seeing his friends. I'm not able to socialize with my friends. I can't attend certain conferences, and that's not even talking about travel. People want to travel, and so all these industries there are also suffering. So lockdowns are not for everybody. They accomplish a certain thing, but at certain cost. And I think balancing it is a very difficult task. And as a society, we either have to be all in it and say, listen, we're all going to respect the rules, everybody, or we're going to have more lockdowns in the years to come.
I agree.
Yeah.
But in order for you to be strong as a society, you have to believe into your government. Right now, what happened is that they created this confusion for everybody, and they lost trust with all the stuff that they're posting and all the stuff that they're saying, data, all these numbers. People are losing trust. I don't even know what they're saying. Most of the time is numbers that if you think about what they said 2 months ago, is completely irrelevant to what's happening right now. That becomes a problem. Back and forth, open, close, open, close. Are we in kindergarten? The red zone, blue zone, green zone. I mean, and my question is, why there is no playbook? I mean, this is a country. Why there is no playbook for situations like this? We have a playbook for in case if a war happens. Why there's no playbook?
I don't think we were prepared for this. I think it went from 0 to 60 really quickly, and it didn't affect just one country. It affected the entire world. And because we are a very interconnected society, everybody either had to play along, right, or not. And we had a lot of people that initially refused to wear masks. Okay, and granted, there are some people that can't wear masks. They have certain medical conditions. Those people excluded. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about general public, who did not want to wear masks when they go out. Okay, that contributed to what they call super spreader events, and these super spreader events caused mass hysteria, and the numbers skyrocketed. When you deal with these pandemics, we have a scientific advisory table, which is basically based on scientists, epidemiologists, and people that know how this type of disease behaves. And they do projections. Now, are projections 100%? No, they're forecasts. It's very much like the weather forecast, right? Now, when I look at the CP24 and say, hey, tomorrow is a chance of rain, it's a chance of rain. It doesn't mean it's going to rain 100%. You can tell me there's a 2 millimeter of rain or 5 or 10, but it's an estimate. Very much the same with these numbers. These numbers are an estimate, and they're based on mathematical projections. It's like estimating anything else. So they could either be wrong, they could be right, or they could be in the ballpark.
Or they can be extremely wrong, because when you say you're going to have 100,000 cases a day, and then you have 150 only, and then you as a citizen, you look at this, I mean, guys, are you trying to scare me? I don't understand what's going on. You tell me 100,000 a day. Yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared for my parents. Yeah. But then you have the next day or a month later, 200-300 cases a day, 5-6 deaths. Why should I believe them?
They usually show what they call a worst case scenario. And it's not meant to scare people or general public. Because don't forget, I don't always understand these forecasts because some of the biostatistics are beyond my knowledge. It's not my area of expertise, But I do trust it in a way that, it's a form of a guidance. I know that if we don't do A, B, and C, then D, E, and F will happen, right? That's how we train to think. And it's very, it's not so much like in economics of, buy low, sell high. It's a slightly different than that because, there's a lot more factors at play. There are different age groups which are affected. There's a different demographics of people with different resources that are affected. People live in different areas. If you live in an urban area, you have a lot more resources. You have a hospital next door. If you live in North Ontario and somewhere on the reserve, there may not be a physician nearby that they can address you. So these numbers are projections, and it's an estimate, and it's they're not always right, and they're not meant to scare people. They're meant to guide us in terms of the preparedness.
For 100,000 cases a day, when you have 1,000, how is it preparing? It's basically it's here, buddy. Sit home and listen to what I'm telling you. Otherwise, you're gonna get sick and die.
Yes,
and that's 0.5%.
Yeah, Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's definitely a scary number, and I hope we never get to that number, because at that number we won't be able to manage. It's going to be a catastrophe. It was already bad, but at these numbers, it's beyond
But
manageable.
that number should have been a year ago, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I agree.
So what's going to happen? Right now they open up everything, so we're going to have another. Well, it's 1,200 cases a day or 1,000 cases a day. A month from now, we're going to have 2,500 cases a day, and then what? Back to lockdown? It will be like what? Switching back and forth?
The important part right now is what they call the variants of the virus. So what are the variants? Variants are different types of the same virus that have mutated over the years, and the flu changes its sort of code. They have H1N1, H3, H5. It changes every single year. When it comes to, for example, a flu vaccine, we looked at the previous years. We looked at the flu season that happens, for example, in Australia and Southeast Asia, and then we make a decision around February, and we make a decision, what's going to happen in the year to come, and then we put a package together for the flu vaccine, and hopefully it's going to be effective. Very much the same with this thing, because this particular coronavirus mutated. It mutated a few times, and we have a number of variants right now. The current vaccines are not always effective, right? So the idea is to immunize everybody as quickly as possible, and to achieve a herd immunity, and to prevent the spread, and to prevent future mutations of this virus. Because if the virus is going to be in an environment, it's going to keep on mutating, it's going to be a problem after problem after problem. So that's what's important, to immunize everybody, stop the spread, and go back to normal life.
Have you seen the lineups for vaccine?
Yes. We are a very interesting society, is that we like everything new, and we work on hype. And obviously the doors are open. Everybody wants to vaccinate because everybody wants to come back to normal. The place where I went yesterday, super organized, really good place. I was in and out in 20 minutes.
Really? Because yeah. I saw online line up. They have elderly people waiting for hours in this cold, because it was cold outside yesterday. Yes. Waiting for hours. I'm so ashamed of the system that they created around this, is that at least the simple things, the respect to the elderly, they can at least make something, or ask us as citizens to help, bring heaters, whatever it is. But come on, I mean, I saw it was shameful. I saw these pictures of this 84-year-old gentleman, elderly, who probably built this country for us so we can have this great life, was standing in line. Yeah, it was listen, I don't want to blame anybody. It's just that they opened up this portal. I'm going to blame them.
Yeah, they opened up the portal to everybody that's like 80 to 85-year-old. And people are trying to sort of register right away. And there was an influx of people, right? So it's a little bit underestimation. Hopefully to learn from their mistakes and it doesn't happen again. From now on, it's going to be the different age group, the 70s, the 60s, the 50s, the 40-year-olds, and the sort of general public. So hopefully, everybody that's, 30 to 40 can get immunized by the summer. Now we have 4 players in the game. There's 4 different vaccines. This will speed up the process. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine does not require sort of this extreme temperature. It can be given in the pharmacies. This will greatly reduce the load on the vaccine clinics, and hopefully it's going to get in the hands of the right people. So,
I wonder how we're going to choose one. I mean, is it going to be like one of those? You're going to be standing outside with this girl running. We'll give you a discount if you get a vaccine from us. Get Johnson & Johnson.
It's going to be mainly on the availability. So when I went yesterday, I received Pfizer vaccine because that was available right now, and that's what I received. They're all pretty good. The Pfizer, it's over 90% effective. Moderna, about 94% effective. AstraZeneca, 82%, and the Johnson & Johnson, 60 to 70% effective. So really, really good. It's much higher than the average flu vaccine. So these vaccines work way better than the flu vaccines.
If we can go back a little bit, why haven't they why haven't they really protected the elderly and letting the young ones just run it through? I mean, obviously everybody would have run through this COVID. You have still a small percentage of dying, but it was just a flush. Everybody would be immune to it. Why just not run it?
There's a lot of young people.
There's a lot of people who are not scared.
A lot of people are not scared. I mean, if you don't know what it is, you're probably not scared. I mean, I work in this field. My clinic's been open from day one. We haven't closed. I've seen a lot of COVID patients. You're in my age. They're really young and healthy. They don't take any medications. They have no chronic medical conditions, and they got really, really sick. And some people died.
Young
people
How
died.
young?
30-year-old.
How many do you know?
A handful.
Because from what the politicians are saying, there's not that many.
No,
there's only 2.
No, it's listen. I've treated these people. Fortunately, none of my patients passed away. I was very lucky, very fortunate. But I know at least a handful of people that are young that passed away from COVID, and because it can hit you really, really hard, and you really don't know what it is until it actually hits you. Some people feel relatively fine. It feels like a cold, like a very mild flu maybe. And some people can take 5 steps without shortness of breath and stopping and catching their breath. It's a really, really serious thing.
I know many people who had COVID. Probably most of my friends had COVID, at least like 60, 70 people who had COVID. All they say the same thing. Just high fever, loss of taste and smell, and body aches. 2-3 days, and then headache, and slowly goes away. Nobody experiencing this whole breathing issue. But some of my friends say, "Listen, we had things worse than this. I mean, this is nothing."
Yeah,
but there's also a lot of broken telephone.
Yeah, again, some people will not always disclose their personal information to you. They might want to sound a sort of certain way, but it is serious. You can take my word for it. I've seen dozens and dozens of positive COVID cases, dozens. Probably 100 people I've seen, and some of them are very mild, some of them very severe, end up in the hospital. I know my personal friends were really sick from this, and it hits you like a train sometimes, and really to a point where just imagine being in these kind of shoes for a second. If you're a healthy 30-year-old person and you have this condition and you can't take a breath, it's like breathing underwater or breathing through a straw, and there is no cure for it, and there is no treatment for it, and the ICUs are full, right? And if you go to the hospital, you go to the emergency room, you're going to get an x-ray, they're going to evaluate you, they'll say, yep, you have a low oxygen, but you don't qualify for admission, first of all, and second of all, we have no beds for you.
What's going to happen then?
That's the exact point I'm trying to come across, is that if you're in this situation, and I hope nobody's in this situation ever again, there's no fix to it, right? So that's what we're trying to prevent. And it's a really, really bad situation because you have something that, you're not sure if you're going to wake up in the morning because you just can't breathe, and there's nothing that nobody can do about it. That's the danger part.
What do you do when the patient comes in and says, "Listen, I'm having difficulty breathing, and obviously tested positive for COVID," or didn't, but this is definitely COVID? What do? Do you send them to emergency right away?
Well, we first of all, we screen everybody that comes in. So if somebody has COVID symptoms or think they have COVID symptoms, because there's a big gamut of symptoms, you can have from loss of taste and smell to extreme shortness of breath, right? So when you suspect you have something, our policy in my clinic is to call first. The physician will screen you over the phone. We'll take as much information to make the proper diagnosis as much as possible. If it's bad enough, we're going to tell you to go to the hospital, right? And if it's something that we can fix, we'll see. You come in person. We have my clinic is essentially isolated, so the reception staff sits in a very different area. There's nobody else that works in the clinic. It's just myself. We wear full sort of PPE, masks, and everything else. And then it's my duty to help the patient. So if it's risk to me, it's acceptable risk to me. It's a risk I have to take because otherwise the patient has nowhere to go, right? So has there been times where if I broken a protocol? Absolutely, right? But I gave a Hippocratic oath. I have to help people, right? I have to help people, and there's been many times I've sent them to emergency room in a really bad shape, and they were sent back home because simply there's no ICU beds like that, I would give them different options like puffers, inhalers, anti-inflammatory medications. If you're an older person, we'll give you aspirin to make sure that you don't form blood clots. So there's a lot of what they call symptomatic relief to make you feel better, but we take it day by day. But everything is very challenging these days because it doesn't matter where you send patient, they have to get screened. Sometimes they get turned away, and sometimes I feel bad for the patient because they have nowhere to go. So
why does it hit so hard at people with medical condition?
So without or with? With. So there's been recent studies that if you have obesity, or if you have diabetes, or if you have other respiratory conditions like asthma or COPD, it really attacks your system. It has to do with the concept that they're trying to figure out right now called inflammasome. It's basically the virus creates a very marked inflammatory response in the form of this, what they call cytokine storm, which you probably heard in the news. And it attacks every single organ in your body from kidneys to lungs. And sometimes it just shuts it off and you're not able to function. And if you have other underlying conditions, your body doesn't have enough resources to deal with it. And part by part, the body starts shutting down. It starts with the lungs, that goes to kidneys, that goes to other organs. So it's a very fast process. It can go from 0 to 60 in a matter of days. The dangerous part is sometimes there's nothing you can do.
What's the first thing that somebody needs to do if they think they have COVID?
First of all, I would probably stay home. I wouldn't go anywhere because, again, if you know you have COVID, you're going to pass it on to somebody else. And you might be a healthy individual and brush it off. And you might be 1-2 days of relatively mild symptoms. But, we live in a society where there's multi-generational homes. There's grandparents sometimes live with you. You can easily pass it to them, right? And they might be even a lot worse shape than you are and may not make it out of it, right? So as much as possible, stay home, call the physician, call somebody who knows what they're doing, let them screen you through it. They can ask you. It might not be sort of COVID. It might be something else. You might have a cold. You might have a pneumonia, bronchitis. You might just have a sore throat.
Right now, anything you get in your body, you think it's COVID. You get a headache. Oh shit! I think I have COVID.
Because we're in pandemic, there's obviously a low level of threshold for this. We obviously, any symptom potentially could be COVID. That's why it's important for a medical professional to screen you and to make sure that, everybody's on the same page. But we'll send you for testing. We have to follow certain guidelines, obviously, but there's a certain things you can do because if it's not COVID, most things else we can fix. If it's a sinus infection, we can give you antibiotics, right? If it's a bronchitis, we can give you an inhaler or puffer, right? So there's a lot of things we can help you with. But
they say there's a major problem, major headaches. But at the same time, they're telling you shouldn't be taking Advil or Tylenol. You shouldn't be taking anything. If you do get COVID and you do experience the headaches, what do you take?
You can't take Advil. You can't take Tylenol? Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Because initially they said you can't take Advil.
Yes. Yeah,
that will give you a heart attack.
Yes. A lot of friends were texting me and messaging me and saying, Steve, look at these Facebook posts. You cannot take Advil for this. This thing, it's absolutely not true. And in fact, because it causes, there's a higher chance of somebody getting blood clots, we will give you things like aspirin sometimes just to prevent it. If you're in the hospital, they might give you sort of aspirin. So Advil, naproxen, Aleve, Tylenol is very safe, but it depends on the person and the patient. You obviously have to speak to your physician because it's very individualized. If you have certain contraindications to taking aspirin and Advil, you shouldn't be taking it.
But what people that have asthma, is it for sure if you get COVID that you go into ICU?
Not for sure. We have a lot of patients that had COVID with asthma that did relatively well. When you have asthma, again, it's a plethora of different symptoms. You can have relatively mild or well-controlled asthma, or you can have asthma that you're on 3 or 4 inhalers and puffers, and you could be a smoker at the same time, and you have multiple allergies, right? So if you're in a relatively good shape with very good controlled asthma and no seasonal allergies, and you're relatively a healthy person, chances are that you'll make out of this. You're going to be okay. That's not to say that in a year from now you may not have breathing issues with exercise, what they call exercise-induced asthma or other things. But again, it's unpredictable because nobody knows because we only had it for about a year. We'll know later. But the idea, the message is that if you have asthma, I hope you're not smoking. I really hope so. Number one. Number two, I hope you're not near people that smoke. Number three, I hope your allergies are controlled. technically you shouldn't be taking things like aspirin and Advil because they can worsen your asthma. But make sure your asthma is well controlled. If you're well controlled, you're well prepared, you can deal with it well.
Can we talk a little bit about mental state?
Sure.
It's a huge problem. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of patients coming in.
Absolutely.
Depressed.
Yes.
And especially the women. I feel so bad for them. I mean, they go through so hard for them, you know. It was hard for them before this, but now it's even harder. How much of effect this caused?
Huge effect. It affects everybody obviously differently. It depends on your predisposing conditions. If you have already existing asthma, or a depression or anxiety, what are your coping skills? You know, can you deal with stress? Do you live alone? Do you have a good support system? Do you take your medications when you're supposed to be taking? Do you have access to a mental health professional, psychologist, psychiatrist? Can you speak to a family doctor or a friend? You know, is there can somebody give you a hand? You know, can somebody sort of help you out in this? You know, so it affects everybody. Obviously, it affects certain people a lot more than others. If you live by yourself, honestly, feel bad because it's you're essentially stuck on your own. You know, it's you, four walls, and Netflix. You know, it's there's not much you can do, and hopefully you're working, and the work sort of keeps you busy. I feel bad for kids for missing their graduations and their social circles and their play dates and sort of their activities and their gyms and everything else and daycares and so forth. It's difficult for many people on different levels. You know, I feel bad for single mothers, you know, who are stuck at home or with a child and who may not have, you know, as resources as, you know, as whole sort of nuclear families to deal with this. It's a very difficult situation. Unfortunately,
family abuse.
Yeah, family abuse has skyrocketed. The divorce numbers have went up significantly. It affected every single aspect of most people's lives. So it's I really hope and I pray that we all going to come out of this really quickly and we return back to normal. And unfortunately, you know, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't really tell you that's going to happen in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But I do know that, you know, if we all take the right steps together, if we do the vaccines, you know, if we
not all of us, right?
Not all of us, right? But if you can do the vaccine, if you can speak to a doctor, they can explain to you if you qualify or not. Follow most public health advice. You know, when I say most, I say because not everybody's going to follow everything. You know, not everybody is following everything from A to Z. You know, we all washed our hands. We all sort of wear our masks. But you know, there's you obviously go for walks. You see like your friends in the street, and you know, and we're only human, right? You cannot be sort of confined to a space for such a long time. You know, the lockdown will be lifted soon. It's not going to be there with us forever, right? It's don't treat it as a prison sentence. It's really not. It's a public health measure. You know, it's there. It's designed to do one thing, is to prevent the disease. And I can assure you that most politicians don't have secondary gains or ideas in their minds about this. It's not done with, you know, sort of implementation that, okay, we're going to harm our society or have a secondary gain beyond this. There's really no play like to it. It's done in every single country in the world. So unless everybody's in cahoots with each other, you know, it's
then why can't we be the examples of doing the best in the world? At this point, unfortunately, we became one of the worst in the world handling this pandemic. I mean, we always been on top of the game. This time it was like we did everything wrong.
Yeah, definitely lessons to be learned. You know, hopefully we learned on, you know, in this kind of thing, we either win or we learn
or lose.
Right. Hopefully, you know, obviously hopefully it doesn't happen, but hopefully we either win or we learn about this. You know, I'm optimist. I'm eternal optimist. You know, I like to see the light at the end of sort of this dark, long 1 or 2 year old sort of tunnel. But I'm personally optimistic. You know, and I'm the person that's seen, you know, people living and dying and those kind of things, and I'm optimistic. So take it from me that, you know, I think we're headed in the right direction.
I kind of hope so. I hope whoever wants to get vaccinated should probably get vaccinated.
Are you getting the vaccine?
I don't think so.
No?
I'm going to wait till everybody. Well, you got it now. Everybody else will get it. I don't think I'm ready
Wait
for
your
that.
turn.
I'll probably wait until everybody gets it, and if there's no weird side effects like twitching eyes and twitching ears,
Yes.
I think I'll
No microchips in your brain.
no microchips, no that stuff. I mean, the stuff that you read on the internet. Oh my god, I don't know who comes up with
Conspiracy
that stuff.
theories and
The
everything else.
conspiracy theories. Listen, I do believe there's a. Listen, I have to disagree. I do believe there's a lot of gains for the government. I believe there's a lot of gains for these companies. There's money, rules, regulations, benefits. I mean, come on, we all see it. We're not stupid, especially in this country. We're not stupid. We see exactly what happened. I feel that you guys, as doctor, were pressured a lot because you guys also got stuck as a hostages because you are there really truly to help people, but you are in between the medical staff and the people who are coming probably to your office every day and say, listen, but this looks like it's fake. And there you are, the one who's sitting in front of them and say, listen, it's not. And then again, confused. Last time I left your office, I had a panic attack, man, from all the stuff that I heard. But I'm sure everybody does. I don't know how you deal with this every day anyways.
You know, I'll tell you a funny story. Do we have time?
Oh, we have a lot of time.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. March of last year, February of last year, before the actual lockdown, before the lockdowns down, there was a craze where people were there was just a recommendation to wear face masks, right? Just before, right? So there was a period of time where everybody was buying different face masks, and there was no guideline to wear the cloth mask that we do today. It has to be the actual surgical mask. So everybody
it has to be surgical. I'm wearing a bandana because just
that's fine. Now it's okay because now we know a little bit more about it. But before it wasn't the case, and I got a call from a producer of the CBC Evening News. And they said, you know, we are in the area. It was a Saturday. We're in the area. Can we come to your clinic and do an interview from you? Because you're open on Saturday. We want to sort of do that. Sure, no problem. And my clinic on Saturday was usually, back then, was very busy. Like right now, we're not so busy because people usually stay home and it's not the same. But before it was quite busy. And it happened so that on the parking lot of the plaza where I am, there was 2 police cruisers. For unrelated matter. They were just parked there. I think there's a restaurant there. They were there. So this is the scenario that we have a waiting room full of people just before the lockdown, right? Everything was open. I have a CBC news van with a big antenna on the roof parked outside my clinic. A cameraman, TV producer, and a reporter in my clinic taking my interview. 2 police cruisers are there. At the same time, for unknown reason and not related to my clinic or anybody else, an ambulance van pulls up. A Toronto EMS pulls up, like York Region, and just parks. There's a Starbucks in the plaza, so it's common that they do. So all the people in my clinic, there's maybe 15, 20 people in the clinic, look around. It says there's a camera here. There's a TV in my clinic with a CP24, and there's a news story about this worldwide pandemic that's about to happen. 2 police cruisers and EMS. Took 30 seconds. The clinic was empty. Everybody panicked. They thought, you know, we were the ground zero. I had the patient 0 in my clinic. Everybody left. You know, we finished the interview. You know, the reporter leaves. Everything is fine. Apparently everybody was sitting in their car. They didn't actually went home. So when they left, there was like a big lineup to get back inside. But this is how the world works. People see with their eyes, you know, they feel with their ears, you know, and they act on emotions. And if one follows, the rest follows, right? So it's a panic mode, right?
Well, that's why you have the media who sometimes creates these panics.
Yes.
And just like you said, you look with your eyes and they're doing it exactly. And I mean, some of the stuff you see on Facebook, and you're like, wow. I mean, how do you really tell what's really happening? You have this what's his name, the Microsoft guy, Bill Gates, and you have all these guys with all these theories. I want to believe them, to be honest with you. I want to believe that this was a conspiracy theory and this whole thing was nonsense.
Some of them are so good and so well organized and engineered that you want to believe them, and they're designed to be believable, right? But they're theories. Right? They're theories, and theories, unless you test them out and they prove to be right, are just theories.
But people looking at numbers, Doug. They're looking at numbers, and they're looking at whatever, just like I said before. I mean, they look at what the government and the health department shows you, and then the actual facts of what really happened. And when there's such a gap, you lose trust, and that's why all these conspiracy theories are so powerful.
Thank God I don't have a Facebook. You
don't have Facebook?
I don't have Facebook.
Instagram?
I have an Instagram. Yes.
How often do you post stuff on Instagram?
Once a month, maybe. It's I don't have time. I work a lot. I have 2 jobs, so. But it's really, I really hope from the bottom of my heart that this gets over soon. And I like doing regular medicine. This is like a trench medicine. This is, every patient you suspect they have something. I enjoy seeing people for, I'm a sports doctor, right? So I enjoy people seeing, for knee pain, for shoulder pain, for back pain, for concussions, joint injections, whatever. But now every patient we have to screen. Like first we ask them, do you have COVID symptoms? And then I ask you if you have a knee pain. It makes my job a lot more difficult. Such are the times, you can't do anything about it. We are part of the system. Do I like it? No. Is it challenging? Yes. Is it going to be over soon? I hope so.
I hope so too. Doc, thank you for coming. I just need, listen, so what I'm going to do after every show now is I want to give some shout outs to the local businesses because they really suffer through
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so we're going to do some stuff. I got most of them, but there's a lot of them are missing, guys. So if I miss some of you, I remember I'll use it next time. So you're going to have to help me with this.
Sure.
So there's a company called Noti.ca, local marketplace. Do you sell stuff or buy stuff online?
Rarely. My wife does.
Okay, tell her there's a site called Noti.ca. It's local stuff. You can post.
How do you spell it?
Notty.ca.
Naughty.ca.
Naughty.ca. Yeah. So, my accent is, man.
Notty.
Probably on this microphone, my accent sounds so bad. I looked at the last video, I'm like, oh my God, 25 years in this country, I still speak like this. Anyways, so you can sell and buy stuff on this website. It's pretty cool. Now, Champagne Optical Eyewear. Do you wear glasses?
No.
I actually bought a pair there. Pretty cool. They have nice stuff. Brands and good stuff.
ChampagneOptical.ca.
Champagne Optical Eyewear. Well, you can Google this stuff. Bootmaster. Cowboy boots. Is that your style? No? I tried it once. It's impossible with my feet. I tried wearing it once. But I'm sure somebody liked it. I mean, it's a pretty cool style. The Hottest Tights. This is... You guys can Google it yourself. That's pretty cool. Maya Exclusive Gifts. They sell... I actually looked at it. They sell some interesting erotic candles.
Okay. To each his own. No judgment,
Okay. We gotta do what we gotta do. We gotta help as much as we can.
Of course.
Comfort Keto. That's actually a pretty cool company. I actually spoke to the owner of the company. They brought these smart cribs that you can actually pull them. They come apart and you can make a table out of it and then it goes back to a crib. Pretty cool thing. Everything goes that direction now. But pretty cool item. You had a kid recently, right?
Yes.
So take a look if you're going to have another one.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
But that's a pretty cool company. I actually looked at myself. All right. Aquastream Swimming School. Swimming is very important for breathing.
Absolutely.
So this probably will help. So Aquastream, I think .ca.com. I didn't get a chance to take a look, but Aquastream Swimming School, good for kids. And the rest is going to be next time. I have a lot more, but we have to wrap it up. Dr. Stephen Matlis, I really, really appreciate you coming by.
My pleasure, anytime.
Hopefully this thing will be done, and I'll get Mr. Barber to buy an extra ticket so the three of us, go to the Raptors game and watch these guys do their thing. And thank you for saving lives. Thank you for being for us. And the lesson is learned. Do the vaccine, or maybe don't.
Yes, it's my pleasure. Everybody stay healthy, stay safe. If you have any questions, just call your doctor. Don't listen to fake news. Don't listen to propaganda and all kinds of stuff. It's a real condition. It affects a lot of people. Unfortunately, some of the actions that we take, have consequences, and obviously it affects our society and everything else. But let's look on the bright side. This is temporary. This is only with us for a short period of time. And I hope that this time next year that, everything is open and we have our life back to normal. So
amen to that. Yes. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.